You're at the Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub, where we enjoy conversations with people who are engaged in the world of coaching.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Coaching Inn. I'm your host, Claire Pedrick, and I'm delighted today to be in the conversation of Bob Singha, who I met on LinkedIn through Mark Bixter, and we said that we should have a chat round a fire. So here we are. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Very grateful to be here with you.
Well, it's absolute delight to meet you. Tell us a bit about your journey into coaching.
My journey into coaching started with gratitude, just like this conversation. And I think that most people listening or watching here would relate to a curiosity around how do we navigate life, how do we live life. And so I was involved in coaching before I knew it had this name. And without going very esoterical right at the beginning,
You can if you want to.
I think that I've been involved in, I'm the descendant of griots and sadhus and rishis and fakirs, doulas and grandmothers and grandfathers who immerse themselves in luxurious, meaningful conversations. And so from a very, very young age, I was obsessed with conversations. And so my coaching journey started very, very young. And I always saw it as a thing that, that's what we're supposed to be doing as humans. And that's how we kind of that's how we get stuff done. Like if something happens, we all get together, maybe in a circle. Across the world, you see that people get together in a circle, or they speak to someone who they trust, someone who can share the space with them. And so in my childhood, those spaces became essential. And so I sought them out and sought those people out and was fascinated by how they did that. And I think I made a promise to myself to learn how to do that, but also be that for others. And then university came, and I became a youth worker after university, and started to do something which was like one-to-one supervision. Became a manager very quickly, and someone said to me, this is really good what you're doing, supervision. And I had the job of kind of taking the good practice from each of the projects around to the other projects. And I cut a very long and good story, but someone said to me, this is not supervision, this is coaching. And I said, what's that? And that became something which has now lasted 28 years. A journey which is beautiful, lovely, amazing conversations, amazing people. And part of that journey now is this conversation that we're going to have together and with everybody listening. And I still have that sense of gratitude now. Someone's listening to this, someone's watching this. And they're the best type of people. So I don't mean to not have the details, but the details,
They were
I think
details.
I think people can read those details on the LinkedIn and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And but my journey is one of gratitude.
Thank you. I love the way you talked about the circles and the almost the elders.
Yes.
What was it about those experiences that you particularly appreciated?
Yeah, I don't often talk about my childhood. I think nowadays I'm in a new season after I turned 50. I was 51 a few days ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that blessing. And something kind of changed. Something was about to change. And so I'm very conscious that as a child, there was missing eldership.
Ah.
And like so many young people that I've worked with over the years, I had to become the elder in my family at a very young age. Sometimes do a bit of parenting for my parents, which is always a recipe for disaster. But, try to look after things to become an elder. And my name, Bob Singha, the elephant in the room, which is a kind of strange name for an Asian looking guy. Bob comes from the word Baba, which means grandfather and child simultaneously.
Ah.
So what would happen is I was the baby of the family, youngest of 4 siblings, and the whole, like, the neighbors would say, oh, like, Baba, Baba. So, like, he's the young kid, he's the Baba. But I had a tendency to have conversations, speak about serious things, maybe even do a few prayers and stuff, which was very strange. And so they would say he's like a grandfather, like he's a wise one. So Baba turned and transformed into Bob. And I've kept Bob, even though there's been some resistance from so, like, my own community. Why are you trying to have a white name, bruv? Why are you trying to be white? Why are you trying to, why are you trying to do that? You can use your other names. And there's something nice about Bob, which is there's a be at the beginning, so be yourself at the beginning and be yourself at the end, and then there's a circle in the middle. And I've kept it because I think it starts a conversation and it stays present there. In terms of eldership, I think that coaching is eldership in action.
Ah.
It's not necessarily age. It's not about old people. It's about having the space and the time and the perspective of an elder in the village. And I think it's vitally important for us as coaches to understand that the teachings and the wisdom of eldership has been passed down, but recently, in the last 50 years maybe, we seem to be disconnected from that vast, deep wisdom of eldership. What does it mean to be an elder in the village? You could be 20 years old, you could be 15 years old, you could be 50 or 60 years old, but having the concept of eldership, of community, of a communal experience, of something that lasts longer than your life, planting trees which you would not know the shade of. There are many, many traditions and rituals and customs, and so we have a deep history which doesn't just go back to Tony Robbins.
Of course.
or like when I meet some people, they was like, oh, this is a new thing called coaching, and I'm like, maybe not so new.
Can we talk about Socrates? And actually, every village in the history of time.
Yes. And I've been fascinated. My ancestry is from Punjab. My parents are from Punjab. My wife was born in Punjab. And so there are Punjabi versions of Greek philosophers.
Yes, of course.
And African examples and Native American examples. And so looking at that similarity, looking at what does it mean to live together, to evolve together, to have those experiences together, I found it very, very resourceful.
Yeah. And they were present in so many places before society changed the way it engaged with geography.
Teaching it in slightly different ways, I think. And I think that there is a huge movement in coaching, but in the world, around anti-colonialism, or looking back to what happened what was existed before colonialism, and colonialism affected the colonizer and the colonized as, you know, in equally bad ways. There's a real challenge to kind of try to overcome some of those new systems of doing stuff. Yeah. And people listening into this, like, it's a crazy situation. Like, I always resonate when I'm resonating with people listening into this, thinking, what a crazy and wonderful thing that people are sparing their time to learn more about coaching, learn more about somebody's coaching journey, stopping at the inn, and using that to help themselves and others. So yeah, I do want to rest back into that gratitude.
And the people you appreciated in those circles absorbed that from the circles they were in, didn't they?
Yes. Yes. I think there's something very human about coaching. I think lots of people agree. And it bypasses our logical brain or our kind of, we haven't got a certificate in that, mate, so I don't know how to. And when we're in a coaching space, or when I'm in a coaching space, even if people are not familiar with the word coaching or the practices of coaching, they can kind of understand that this is good. This is what we're supposed to be doing. You know, it's not on YouTube. Like, if somebody wants to learn a new language, I've got to go on YouTube. If somebody's saying, well, you know, I'm going for a divorce, I'm going to watch a YouTube. I'm gonna watch some shorts. I'm gonna be immersed in ChatGPT or something like that. And I think, what about having a chat? Like, should we have a conversation? Let's have a circle. Let's look at what the space is saying.
Let's be together.
Let's remember. And people often say they have a familiarity with it. Say, oh yeah, oh of course. And so that's why it feels like a remembering rather than a learning or a introduction to.
And a being known.
Yes.
Being seen.
Yes. Being connected, being involved. We've, for a variety of reasons, feel disconnected. Young people, especially across the world, feel disconnected. There's a very famous phrase around, if a child is not initiated into the village. The actual phrase is, they will burn the village down to feel the warmth.
Oh.
Now, I've spent most of my career trying to change that they will burn the village down to they may. Because what happens is the policy in this country is said if somebody has adverse childhood experiences, ACEs as they call it, I love to label stuff. That's a colonial leftover. Let's label and categorize things. But if you have an adverse childhood experience, which I had many, I'm at risk of burning down the village. So, let's make sure we track that person and put that person in prison and, get that into special measures. But that concept of may burn down to feel the warmth gives some hope. And the phrase is, it takes a village. And often people say, yeah, it does take a village. It takes a village to nurture a young person, a man, a woman, a child. It takes a village to get married. It takes a village to navigate a divorce. It takes a village to create a career. It takes a village to create disruption. It takes a village to create confusion. These are not individual accusatory.
Yeah.
So I've had deep conversations around personal development, and I think personal development is overrated. So community development and accessing that, this may be something that helps more than just us two. That the village is speaking. Allows me to enrich my conversations whenever I have that perspective that there's a communal experience as well, that there's not just two, that there's three.
I've got so many wonderings. You've taken me back as you're talking to a weekend that we had recently where my cousins, I have many cousins, where we came together for a weekend and remembered being a village.
Beautiful.
Because as children, we used to spend 3 or 4 days a year together in one place. 12 cousins, parents, everybody. And that formed us as humans, that being together. And as you're talking, I'm also noticing that not everyone has the privilege of being known by any village. And there'll be somebody listening today who may have been brought up in quite an isolated space. Yes, such an interesting thing, isn't it, Bob?
Yes, I have many conversations with people that feel isolated, disconnected, maybe have a perception that they never had a village. Often the conversation is around what's the illusion and what's the reality.
Yeah.
And when you're working with young people, and if they're involved in serious youth violence, if they're involved in classroom disruption, and that could work with adults who are in boardrooms causing disruption. Often my metaphors are working with young people, but my journey's taken me into various different conversations that actually they were born into a village, but it's so distant, it's so disconnected, that if there was a village, what is the village waiting to be remembered? And the concept that we actually wouldn't be alive, like physically, biologically, spiritually, emotionally, we wouldn't be alive without that village. So sometimes it seems like we're disconnected. Sometimes it seems like we are alone. And that's the challenge. The challenge is about how do we remember, become a member of again. And my wisdom, the whisper of my ancestors say that there's some things that are temporary and some things that are eternal. And so we can have those conversations that you're always connected. Sometimes it may seem that you're not. And that's cool too, because we want to have our own identity. And as humans, we're evolving to say, well, this is my bit, and this is what I want to do, and these are my interests. And I think that there's just sections that have taken that maybe a bit too far. My house, my conversation, my practice, my bit of land, my whatever. And most traditions around the world talk about being lost in the Maya, the illusion. And so having that conversation to say, okay, and it's very practical conversations. These sound like spiritual conversations here, but these are conversations with young people that are very practical. Like, hey, what are the things that are changing in your life, and what are the things that don't ever change?
Yeah.
And how are they dancing together? How are they present in this moment now? And so having that aspect, which is often left out, it's something that a coach learns in practice or remembers in practice, because obviously there's not a module. There's not often modules on courses about, like the eternal and the temporal. There's a deep philosophical points there, but I think that's what we are as coaches. That's what our tribe is. That we have inherited that. That is what my friend Bio says is a prior generosity.
Oh.
And I think that what have we inherited? What do we carry with us? What makes us feel a bit taller? And so even now, there'll be people listening in. How do you work in schools? These are the emails that I get. How do you work in schools? How much do you charge? What's the contracting? I have very, very practical conversations. Recently, I've had very, very practical and lots of conversations with people interested. I've accepted the invitation now to be on podcasts and produce content and be a little bit more out there, and so that has I've invited people to be able to ask questions, and they ask very practical questions. Well, how do you do this, and how do you set up how do you do this? And I think, yes, all of that is useful, but there is a conversation which is richer and a bit more ancient that we can have at the same time.
Yeah. And as you're talking, there's something about connecting or reconnecting for me with our ancestors, with those who came before us.
Yes. Appreciating those three different places. I think that what I've noticed is that there's a duality. There's kind of you and me. There's a client and there's a coach. And most of our coaching conversations, especially training of coaches, there's kind of two things, like you and me. What is the coach doing? What is the client doing? And I've always gone, okay, so what's the village doing? What's the space in between? And I've always gone, whenever I start talking about twos, the duality, I've always been trained, I've always tried to remember, what's the third item?
Yeah.
What's the third space? And that reconnection is like the space exists. The space exists. The space has its own message, which we can both be surprised about. And so even now, there's going to be questions that people are listening, people are watching this, they have questions, and potentially you have answers and maybe I have answers, but there's something in the middle. And in that middle space is where even the questions come from. Like everything comes from that silence and that appreciation of silence. When I train coaches, and so I've been training coaches for a long time, and I would say, have you ever had a session where no one spoke? And they say, well, I've had silences the whole session, start and finish, silence. And they think, oh yeah, that would be amazing. But anyway, let's go back. The art and the presence of having and sharing silences, it's almost like a lost inheritance that we walk past. Like, what do I say? How do I say it? Is it I grow? And what kind of models? And blah, 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 blah. How do I say this? How do I say that? How do I say... Just like, go there and sculpt the silence. And the most profoundest thing, when I started as a coach trainer, I wanted to be like, I've got this model and I've got the fancy, I want to be the I want to be the person that's got my own kind of acronym on what have you. And the most thing, and it was quite a humbling process, was to be there.
Yeah.
Notice your nervousness, notice your anxiety, notice your keenness to cure, to save, to ask, to get it solved. Notice that I dance. And notice that you're actually here to remember how to be with silence.
The most extraordinary things happen in the silence, don't they?
Yes.
I'm reminded of a couple of things which could take us, so let's see where we go. Oscar Trimboli talks about the dialogue being an entity of itself, which is what you're describing here. And I'm also wondering about your ancestors and their silence.
Yes. Yeah. So, what are you wondering? Let me not assume.
So in my mind, I'm going back 2 or 3 generations. And I'm remembering a story that I heard of my great-grandmother watching out for her husband and cutting up the potatoes really small because she'd been talking in the street, and she had to cut them up really small so she could cook them quickly for his dinner when he got home. And they were in London. They were in West London, and they had a greengrocer's. And I was wondering about, I could see them chatting away, and I just had a wonder about that generation in your family, and how they might have engaged in silence circles differently or in similar ways.
Yes. So like most coaching questions, or most questions, I'm going to invite everybody to reflect on that answer. Like sometimes we're fascinated with what would be Bob's answer to this? And that's call 2. What's Claire's answer to this? But the person listening may forget, and it's time to remember what their answer is too. Simultaneously. It's not, mine is not worse or better or anything else, or there's not a hierarchy in this. You know, that's what the colonials will do. Oh, we're a bit, you're lieutenant and you're the highest person, you get the bigger chair, and you're white and you're a bit darker and you're like God and you're not like God. You know, so like simultaneously we can occupy many conversations at the same time. Like my ancestry is your ancestry at some point. Like we're the descendants of people that knew how to look after each other. The ones that didn't, they died.
Yeah.
They got eaten by the lions or whatever. And the ones that said, come on, there's a lion coming. They're the ones that had a conversation. There are lions over there. Don't go over there. You know, I'm scared. I've got a cut here. And so, at a very essential level, my ancestry is your grandmother. At a different perspective, at a more recent perspective, I am the descendant of masters. So there's a tradition in my family, especially my dad's family, but in my mum's family too, who were very academic, very learned. So in the 1920s in India, there was 3 people in my village in northern India, in Punjab, who were MA at English.
Wow.
So who used to quote sonnets of Shakespeare in the 1920s. And so my dad continued that and would quote Byron, Milton. He was quite an annoying, quite, for many different reasons. Like, he was, and I rejected that a lot. I rejected that. Like, that was the worst thing. I'd never wanted to be like my dad. And so I kind of rejected a lot of that fantastic, beautiful poetry and prose. And so he was very British and saw himself as British and didn't know Punjabi that much and knew English to a very high level. And that ancestry of mastery, of that ancestry of learning, of academia, of being a lecturer, of teaching. But I also have an ancestry of people who fought against the British and had to leave, and they were killed in the move to be independent. And so the three M's, the masters, the martyrs for the cause. I often put out posts which say Inqilab Jindabad, which is long live the revolution. And so it was the call to everybody to come together as a community to move forward with the revolution. And also my ancestry, unfortunately, have murderers in it. My dad's cousin assassinated the chief minister of Punjab. And I don't say that with any bravado. I just say that as there's an aspect of delivering on promises, being in the community, being communal. There's a connection between those three things which still live on with me now. And so my ancestry is a deep fire, a deep striving for justice, of nurturing of our young, which I think is the most important thing that we can do. I think if we learn how to nurture our young, it helps us. It helps us. And so my ancestry is alive today. And those conversations with the grandmothers, the doulas, when somebody's giving birth, there's somebody that comes with the skills of giving birth, helping somebody to give birth. But more recently, in the last 10 years, I've met with and been fascinated by people who are death doulas, and so there's somebody in the transition which holds your hand, which shares that space, which stays centered in an uncertain, confusing, in the tears. I'm like, this is our ancestry. This is my ancestry. Yes to John Whitmore, and yes to Socrates, and yes to good old Big Tony Robbins. Yes. But also these thousands and hundreds of thousands of women, of men who have stood in the fire, stood around that fire, attended that fire. And so my ancestry is, I feel very humbled by it. I feel very, very humbled by it, because without that ancestry, I wouldn't have been able to sit in situations where I'm having a conversation with someone that literally has a sword down the side of their jeans. A sword, not a knife. Where I've had conversations where someone says, bro, don't go there, or I'm going to have to, take some damage on you. People often say, why do you sit near the door? In a coaching session, I'd know where the doors are, I'd know where the exits are. And so when you refine that, you say fire, it can warm you, it can heal you, it can cook your food. But we know it also can burn. We also can use it as a celebration. We can also use it as a cleansing. And so that space, like this coaching in, we're sitting around this fire. This is, we're both descendants of this. Mm-hmm. And even before we go on to something else, I have a message from the village for you, Claire. I actually didn't come here to promote anything. I don't really have anything to sell. I actually came to say thank you. I know who you are. And the village is grateful. I think what you're doing in your own style, is deeply impactful. I've listened to some episodes, and I wanted to come and say thank you, really genuinely. I think we can have many more conversations about the details. But I've known about 3D coaching, I've known about you for many years. I've deliberately not kind of come into this noise of what coaching is. I think there's quite a lot of noise, and I've been creating projects over there. But I've always seen you as an elder.
Wow.
And so you are my ancestry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're all in connection. I could sit by this fire for a very long time and have appreciated so very much the beginning of what I hope is a bigger conversation, Bob, over time.
Yes. It's an uncertain time for coaches. The AI is real. And I don't think that we can underestimate that. And I think in times of great uncertainty, we rely on elders. There's a call for eldership. There's a call for a stillness, a reconnection with something that existed before AI, that will exist after AI, which will ground us.
Yeah.
And my call to coaches who are feeling pain, feeling uncertainty about their business, feeling uncertainty about how they're going to take care of themselves and their families, that the answers are potentially in places that we've forgotten to look. The answers are in the seasons. If we're in transition points, you might have a really fantastic coat. You're like, oh, this is a beautiful coat. It has a fur at the side, but you're wearing it in the summer.
Yeah.
And so somehow you go, this was really good. But is it really good in this transition? Is it really good in this new season? And so our answers are close, and the answers, are in places that they're in the potatoes that your grandmother was cutting. Because the potatoes are born in the darkness, in the silence, and harvested and shaped. And so the answers, if we take the time, are really close. But there is a call for us to be able to be in these conversations. Our tribe is being called forth to be in these conversations. There are literally children starving today with our taxpayers' money. And so there are conversations, there are young people who are watching YouTube right now, or social media or TikTok, and considering that they're so lost that they may take someone else's life for their own. Yeah. And so we are being called forward to be in these conversations of people who are lost and disconnected and disenfranchised, but also who want to take part in this. There are beautiful conversations waiting for you. I do want to say, contact me. If people don't contact me, people feel that this is kind of like you're watching a TV. I am a real person. You can send a message, you can reach out, and we can remember together.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
And what's the best way for people to contact you?
Well, I have a very interesting name. I think if you just put my name, BOBSINGHA, I have a name that you can find me.
Okay.
I've created bobsingha.com. You can find me. I think people will find me on LinkedIn. I have a distinctive moustache. My British side The old British would have a curly moustache, and Punjabis would have a curly moustache. So this is my British side, and this is my Punjabi side. This kind of went down at Brexit. It kept falling down. I had to keep curling it. But I have a distinctive name, a distinctive. If you want to find me, you'll be able to find me. I'm sure we'll have a link somewhere on this thing.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes.
And I want people to know that actually, however many people listen to this, I'd have Robbie Swell's coaching journey, Alex Swallow. I had a fantastic conversation with him recently, and I put out a call saying I'll be in the comments, I'll be in the DMs, I'll be, remembering together. Now, out of the people, I had 10 people contacting me. Now, if you think about it, that's not that many. Like, I've managed to speak with all of those people, had conversations with those people. So I'm gonna encourage people to overcome that. No, I'll do it later. I don't know what to say. I don't have an agenda. I don't have a question. Might be busy. Bob seems to be a bit of a weirdo. Whatever that stuff is, and I promise you that I will match your curiosity. That I genuinely haven't got a funnel of marketing, or I don't know what someone said to me, high ticket clients. I'm still trying to work out what that means, but yes, I'm definitely in the field of coaching, a reluctant coach, a coach that is actually coaching, and I'd love to hear your story and remember your answers together.
What an invitation to expand the circle.
Yes.
Bob Singha, thank you so much for coming to the Coaching In today.
Thank you.
So grateful. What a beautiful conversation, and I hope that we will have another.
Me too.
And thank you everyone for listening. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd love you to share the podcast with a friend or leave a comment on social media. And if you'd like to become a regular at the Coaching In, you can subscribe on Podbean and all major podcast channels. We look forward to welcoming you next time. You've been listening to The Coaching In, 3D Coaching's virtual pub. For more information, check out 3dcoaching.com.